All right. Well, we're seeing people kind of pile in right now. Why don't we get started? First, we've got the ribbon team here, so thanks everyone for joining. I thought it would be helpful to start with answering three questions to just help set context for what this conversation is and why. I know we had a brief little intro in the Slack channel that we posted this on, but I think first and foremost, it's why are we doing this? And Kevin and I, from all of the different coffee chats that we have had with folks in the community, about 50% of them are centered around careers. And a lot of people struggle with making sense of what companies are doing in the space, what goes beyond the job description. So we wanted to give folks a chance to get to meet the teams that are working at these companies, learn a little bit more about them, and just really kind of get under the hood of what it's like at these companies. And so the folks here at Ribbon have partnered with us to test this out and see how it goes for folks. So we want this to really be an informal conversation about what it's like to work there and get some information about the different types of roles that exist. So what is Ribbon? I'm going to give my little blurb of what Ribbon is and my experience with Ribbon. I will let our folks in the sales and marketing teams at Ribbon talk to it in a bit more depth, but it's essentially a company building a platform to provide real-time info on providers and insurance. And so when I was working at Bind, we evaluated different, Bind is a health insurance startup. It's evaluated different companies that could help improve our provider directory, because one of the biggest things that we could do is give our members of our insurance accurate information on what doctors to go for what. And that was a massive problem that we used United's provider directory, and it was tricky. And so Ribbon is helping companies to make sure that data is actually useful for people using it. So I will let them talk a little bit more in depth about the problems they're solving and what that is. But and then why do we have three folks from Ribbon here? We've got Shelly, who's the director of marketing, Laura, who's the growth lead, and Misha, who's the senior director of strategic partnerships. And I think one of the things that we've heard from folks is it gets hard to go beyond the job descriptions of what are the differences in these types of roles, and where go-to-market is an important growth area and hiring area for Ribbon right now. Understanding how do those functions work together? What are you really looking for in those functions, and what are you really going to do in those roles to help you all figure out where you want to spend time and apply and what would be most interesting for you. So that's my quick intro, probably not as quick as we would have liked it to have been, but we will have you guys all in the audience. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. We will try to get to them throughout. If we have time at the end, we'll host a little bit of a live Q&A for people to either come on stage or ask questions via the chat. So, but again, informal. So as questions pop up, please let us know. So with that, maybe I'll hand it over to introduce some of the Ribbon team, starting maybe Shelly with you on just a quick background on yourself. Why did you join Ribbon? And then the one or two liner on your role, because we'll get into a bit more of the role details into that. And then what is your favorite thing to do outside of work?
Oh, okay. Fun. So hi, everyone. My name is Shelly. Like Ryan said, I'm a director of marketing at Ribbon. I've been at Ribbon for about 4 months, but feels more like 4 years at this point in Ribbon years. Prior to Ribbon, I was at a company called Flatiron Health for 3 years, also in marketing. I started out on the product marketing team there, and then became more of a marketing generalist over time. And then before Flatiron, I was in strategy consulting at IBM doing internal corporate strategy. So was not in marketing and was not in healthcare. The reason why I chose to work at Ribbon is really threefold. First, from a marketing perspective, I found it really exciting to be able to build the marketing function from the ground up at a company that was growing really quickly. And still in an environment where I could wear a bunch of different hats as it is across the entire organization, but also like think about building for scale. And then secondly, from a healthcare kind of industry perspective, I wanted to work at a company that I felt was driving impact across the entire healthcare ecosystem, and found that Ribbon's kind of mission and vision really spoke to that simplification across like so many different use cases and segments. And then third, I would say, is very much the people at Ribbon. I wanted to go somewhere where I really believed in the leadership and also the colleagues that I'd be working with every day, and found that Ribbon's uniqueness is really how much we focus on our values and really integrate that into the people we hire and everything we do, from a process standpoint and a work standpoint. So that's why I joined Ribbon. In terms of, wait, Ryan, the next question was what roles we're hiring for, right?
Yep, on the marketing. Yep.
On the marketing team. Okay, so we're hiring for a lot of roles, but the role that I'm really excited about to talk more in depth about today is the product marketing roles that we're hiring for. We're hiring for a lead for our product marketing team, as well as a senior product marketing manager. And then last question was what I do for fun.
Outside of work, yes.
Okay. I'm always embarrassed about this question because I feel like people at Ribbon have such cool hobbies. Like some of us make popsicles and like have like really interesting ones. And I'm really just like, I spend my time outside of work hanging out with my friends and doing like girls' nights and funny like art projects and things like that, but don't really have like a particular hobby that I'm, super dedicated to.
That's okay. Girls' nights are fun nights. My wife, I think, wishes she had more of them. So that's all good. All right, Laura.
Great. So hi, everyone. I'm Laura. I lead our digital health growth team here at Ribbon. Some background on myself. I'm going to try to make this sound different from Jelly, even though we have similar backgrounds. So I joined Ribbon just under a year ago now, and I joined from Flatiron Health, where I led partnerships with life sciences companies. I was there for about 7 years, and prior to Flatiron, spent a few years in healthcare consulting. So I've spent my entire career in healthcare. Why Ribbon? I think 3 things really stuck out to me about Ribbon as a company. First of all, I'm a healthcare data person and had done that kind of work at Flatiron, but was really excited about kind of continuing that mission, and kind of to the second piece of that, really kind of bringing healthcare data to the digital health realm. I think over the past few years, both with the pandemic, but also kind of even before that, have seen a lot of momentum in the digital health space. And I was really excited by Ribbon's work and kind of unique position across digital health. And then the third thing was our values and our people. Our values, and we'll go into this more, but we are a really, really values-oriented company. It comes through in our interview process. It comes through in how we work as a team. It comes through in how we work as a company and with other companies. And I found that to be really, really unparalleled across some of the opportunities I was exploring. Roles that we're hiring for. We are hiring for a bunch of roles. I think we have something like 8 or 9 open headcount on the growth team, growing quickly. The 2 that I will highlight, one is a lead level role, so really building large enterprise partnerships with digital health companies, and then serving as the voice of digital health internally at Ribbon. And similarly, also hiring for manager level roles who will help build partnerships with smaller startups and smaller enterprises. And outside of work, I run and I ski. So those are my 2 main hobbies.
Where was the last place you skied?
I haven't gotten out as much as I would like, but Stowe is a go-to for me in Vermont.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, Misha.
Hi, everyone. These are tough to follow. Okay, so I'm Misha. I lead our strategic partnerships team, which for those of you that have been exposed to partnerships team in the past means a lot of different things, a lot of different places. And we'll get into like a bunch of detail about what our team does, but we're focused on a lot of like 0 to 1 activity for the business and trying to test out things that maybe initially aren't so scalable, but eventually will help the broader business grow. So that's a little bit about kind of like our team in a very, very quick nutshell. I joined Ribbon almost 2 years ago. There were 10 people at the time, and I joined for, I'll say everyone said 3 reasons, I'll say 2 reasons. If you'd asked me at the time, like when I was like looking at what my next opportunity would be, I would have told you that I was going to join a product role at a care delivery company because it was intersection of my interests and my skills. And I ended up in a partnerships role at a data company. And why was that? It was because when I met Nate, I was like very taken by the company that they were building and the way that they were thinking about decision making and investing in people, investing in partnerships, when there were only like 5 or 6 people sitting around the table. Like the thoughtfulness at that point was extremely genuine and extremely long lasting in the way that it was being communicated. And so I kind of heard that and I thought, I want to be part of that company that's building it in that way. And then the second thing was the problem space. The more I understood about the pain point that they were solving and how they were solving it, the more I could think about the applications across the industry. I built features on top of core provider data, and I knew what that entailed from a member experience standpoint and from large enterprises and what they're doing. And it was so interesting to think about like the way that they were solving this data problem and doing so in such a in a way that was just like building on top of the previous work. So I was then taken by company, problem, and then opportunity and scale of a number of patients we could reach at the end of the day with the impact we can have with our data, which is something like rare, I think, if you are a backend data company to say and think about. It's like that patient piece. So that's a little bit of like why I joined. In terms of roles that I'm hiring for, so really looking to bring someone on to help build our channel partnerships function. We'll get into a lot of details here, like what even is a channel, but I would think of this as a way for Ribbon to extend its reach, to be a part of existing platform solutions, and build these bi-directional partnerships where we can continue to grow in the market that way. So someone who would come in lead level role and just be the thought leader and the person to roll up their sleeves and work on the deals, but then build the function around that as well. And then outside of work, I love to cook and host dinner parties.
Awesome. Misha smiles as she talks about the partnerships definition, because we talked about that a little bit yesterday about what do all of those buzzwords mean in terms of what somebody would do. So we will get into that. So Misha, I might come back to you quickly as you were talking about your being enamored with the problems that Ribbon is solving and getting close to patients. Can you give us a little bit more about how you would describe what Ribbon really does and the problems you're looking to solve there?
Yeah. So we'll say pretty simply, we're a provider data company, and we are really just hoping to have the very best data assets around doctors, where they practice, what insurances they accept, what facilities are they affiliated, how well do they do the thing they say they do they actually do the thing that you need? So we've like really leaned into having the very best asset and been pretty focused on developing that as our core product or set of products. And we deliver the data via an API. So that makes us a piece of backend infrastructure. We sit behind the scenes, and we can sit behind many scenes. So it's just, we can sit behind the scene of a find care experience that you would go onto the web and as a member or a patient and find yourself. We sit deep within a workflow of being able to identify whether a provider is in or out of network. We can sit kind of in any place because we are just this piece of infrastructure. And that gives us a way to both power a number of workflows, but also, we'll get into this maybe a little bit, have like a series of network effects from doing so. There's the way that our product is built is that while we have all this data that we're gathering to build this very best data set, we're also collecting a lot of data from our partners to all around provider data to continue to like invest and improve the set we have. So it's this like really interesting tie that we have in terms of connecting to all these different places and workflows and types of companies to continue to focus on our core asset, and then ultimately our core mission.
Yeah, and I'm curious, as you describe that, who are you from a partnerships perspective, once you're in with somebody, who are you really spending time with as the key contact on the other side? Like who would these people be working with?
Oftentimes it is the head of product or the product lead for the person who's responsible for whether it's like building out something for referrals or something with provider data management. There is a business owner, which can ranging on the use case. It could be the head of operations, the head of clinical operations at a care delivery company, or it could be the head of network design if they're responsible for designing the a plan. And most, I want to say, like the majority of these partnerships have some type of C-suite or executive exposure as well, because it has ended up being like a core piece of the company in terms of the way they're going to grow or solve like an operational problem. And so there is exposure at that level as well. So it ends up being kind of like a cross-functional team on the partner side.
Sure. And Laura, maybe like going back more upstream on that, Bind was a startup, Series A when we were starting to evaluate you guys. What's the spectrum of companies that from a growth perspective you're really looking at, and who do you work with on the other side of from a more sales and business development perspective?
Yeah. So on the digital health side, we will work with anyone from a pre-seed telemedicine 3-person startup through to larger public enterprises, and really kind of across the realm of primary care, employer care navigation, specialty care, referral management. So supporting a lot of different types of companies across all stages. We're also working with more traditional payers and providers outside of digital health. But really kind of casting a wide net as it relates to potential partners.
Mm-hmm. I may pivot a little bit here, kind of on overall company. And Shelley, you talked a little bit about how you're 4 months in and you were attracted by some of the culture. Well, give us people can use the buzzwords about collaborative and people operating with ambiguity. Give us a tangible example of what you've seen at Ribbon that would help to kind of explain what the culture is, given you're so early there.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what really impressed me about Ribbon upon joining is our values are very integrated into whatever you want to call culture, right? And so some kind of habits of that are every week we have an all hands meeting. We call it our all paws meeting because we're a very dog friendly culture as well. And Nate, our CEO, reads through every single value, and different members of the Ribbon team present on a project or a situation that relates to that value, and why that is an example of that particular value. And so we have those kind of as like North Stars for guiding us on, what we should be doing and how we should be doing it, which I think is really impressive at a Series B stage company to have that already set up as a foundation in your org. And so when you're, working hard to do all of these different things, you have that as like a guidepost in terms of how you treat each other, what's important, what you should be thinking about. Another example of how our culture is kind of infused into even our recruiting process is we do an interview round during our final stage called the Who. And that's really about who you are as a person. And so I very much felt like when I joined Ribbon, people who I'd interviewed with knew who I was, like not just from my resume and my work experience, but what I cared about, what were like the highs and lows of my different, parts of my life. And that causes us to really hire people and have people at the company that care about each other outside of work and is an integral part of how we live our day-to-day at Ribbon.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what does it mean to be a dog-friendly company? What do you guys do with the dogs?
Yeah, well, we have them running around the office. Sometimes there's more than one, which is both like nice and distracting, but in a good way. Nate, our CEO, has a dog called Captain, and he just kind of like walks by your desk, says hi, and walks away. But then when there are others, of course, you get to like watch them play with each other, which is always fun.
It's Captain's world, and we're just living in
it. Basically.
I like that. And on that note, is right now, what is the at office versus not versus remote kind of structure like?
Does anyone else want to take that?
Laura.
Okay.
Sure, I'm happy to take it. We have an office kind of in the Soho, Chinatown area. We are, I would say, a New York located office. Over the past few months have had people remote due to Omicron, but hope is to have people in at least a couple days a week, I think, on a more regular cadence moving forward, probably starting in the spring.
Gotcha. Okay. And Misha, given you've been there a bit longer, how would you say that, I'm sure everything that Shelley says rings true to you, but how has the culture changed, or any good examples of culture given your tenure at the company?
I'm going to answer that in reverse and tell you how it stayed the same, because I think it's maybe a bit telling, because I think the ways it's changed is because we've just grown. And so it's not, the culture hasn't changed, just maybe some of the habits and processes may have just shifted. The way we've stayed the same is, I think we have, it's gonna be a very odd way of describing a company, I think, but our values are almost like these like morals for us. And like, we have this like unwavering is not the right word. We've just like these set of like principles that we really fall back to in moments where we're not really sure. And because we're growing, there are a lot of moments where we're not really sure. And I can think of I'm going to give an example we chatted about, but I can think of this like moment that really sticks out in my mind of like Ribbon staying true to the values in the earlier days, which was we were Series A company, like revenue is important. And we were evaluating a potential partnership that had like a pretty significant dollar amount attached to it. And ultimately, like there were a lot of factors tied to this, but ultimately we decided to walk away. And we walked away because it wasn't values aligned. And by values aligned, it was one of these, it would have been a partnership in which it would have put extreme amounts of pressure on our deployment team. It would have been a very like questionable use of the data in a way that maybe wasn't the way that we would want our data to be. It wasn't as aligned with some of the other problems that we were solving. Questionable is maybe a bit too harsh for it. It just like wasn't exactly like the use case we wanted to power at the time. And ultimately we knew it was just going to put on the strain on the team, and that would actually have caused like a lot more of this like of a ripple effect. And so we walked. And it wasn't, one of our values is put your team first, and it violated our put your team first value. And so taking care of the team was more important to us than the dollars, and we want the dollars. And I thought that was, it set this precedent that we were, we would be strong. Like if we just kind of fell back on these values and really thought about like, why do they exist and what, why do we live by them? It would lead to better outcomes. And ultimately it opened up like capacity on that team so that they could actually take on a lot more interesting work and help us grow in other ways. And so I think that it was this, especially, at the moment that we were as a company, to walk from revenue was for the reasons that we did, I thought was pretty telling of how we've like lived by them, at least on the go-to-market side.
And I'm curious on that note, really for any of you, but obviously there's a lot of decision making, and having sat in those rooms where you're trying to bring in a large customer and you've got different stakeholders having those, like, how does that decision-making process work at Ribbon, and who's really driving that and owning that from, I mean, you say it's product decision, it's an operating decision to do that versus market driven, but how does that decision-making process happen at Ribbon? Maybe keep going with that, Misha, and then
yeah, I'm happy to give a little. So I'm going to answer this with a couple like tactical things to make it real. So we're a Google Doc company. We like to like write things down and use it as a way to solicit a lot of feedback, comment on it, iterate on it, and actually continue to refine. It's allowed us to be pretty cross-functional and to be pretty and to be transparent about the types of things that we're deciding upon. And so that's one. So a lot of decision making comes from like context setting and sharing within written docs. Another one then becomes like, we have had a fair number of like trade-off discussions where each person will like play a role. So if you are sitting in a team, in a room with someone from marketing, someone from growth, someone from partnerships, someone from sales engineering, trying to decide which of the deals to put resources behind, it's like a healthy debate of like what, like, why this and not that. That I would say that is a relatively bottoms up like approach to decision making, and that we're soliciting a lot of feedback from individuals, and then like, you know, maybe a smaller group will actually like look at all the information and come to like what that like consensus would, like, you know, what that decision would be, but then becomes like right around, like turns right back around to the team and says, and we'll say like, all right, now the how, now we've like made a decision, now like the what next or the how, that's again like another process of soliciting feedback and approaches from the broader org on how we end up like doing that. So that's maybe a little bit of how I would answer it. Curious, like, to, you know, Shelly, Laura, like how you guys would describe.
Yeah, it's, oh, go ahead, Laura.
Oh, no, I was going to say, that all rings true for me as well. The one other point I was going to highlight is going back to our values, the value around building with empathy and really making sure that the decisions that we're making are rooted in kind of doing the best thing for the patient. And so when we think about products that we're building, signal from the market, how do we really tie all of that decision making back to what we're hearing from the market, what we're hearing from our partners around what is going to help them and what is going to help their patients?
Yeah, that's funny because I was about to say the same exact thing. Because Ryan, you asked like, is it the product function that's making the decisions? Is it go to market? It's the patient. Everything at Ribbon and every decision we make is building with empathy and making decisions based on what's best for the patient. And so having that as like a key factor in our process makes that decision-making process easier. The other thing I'll add is when anyone joins Ribbon, we put together this thing called a working norms doc. And one of the things you write on that is like what stresses you out the most. And for me, like ineffective decision-making was the number one thing on my working norms doc. And really was just like, yep, my biggest pet peeve is like having swirl on decisions. And I can honestly say I haven't had that experience thus far at Ribbon because I think our decision-making process is so centered around that North Star that you almost have a way of like centering what you do around that. And so it is very like bottoms up. It is very collaborative. We are a small-ish company, so there is a lot of feedback, but it never feels like you're swirling back and forth on the same kind of decision or not being able to execute on it.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Can I add maybe one more thing that I realize that kind of plays in here. So one of our values is stay hungry, keep improving. And where that shows up, I think, in decision making is we're okay to like commit, try it. And if it doesn't work, just be like, you know, actually like reflect on why, and then try it again. So that like that iterative process is like throughout the organization. Have seen like folks like test something, it doesn't work, learn from it, and then move on. So
yeah, I used to call that being comfortable with the implications of whatever decisions we are making. So I can appreciate that. Shelly, I'm going to come back to one of the things that you mentioned is wearing a lot of hats. You guys are at Series B, I think around 54 million in funding right now. How many employees do you have at Ribbon right now?
I think we're around 70. Is that right, guys? Okay. Yeah, around 70, hoping to hire a lot more. I think hoping to get to, Taya's on the call, so she can correct me if I'm wrong, but around 200
okay.
in the future.
And so where my question is going to go with that is I joined Bind around 100, and I've learned quickly there that we were at a culture previously that was wearing a lot of hats was the norm to do at pre-100. We're getting to a place where you really needed to start figuring out swim lanes and structure and figuring out what roles and responsibilities were. And it was figuring that stage out. I'm curious how that feels right now, which we'll probably start to get into a little bit of the roles stuff in a minute here. But does it still feel like wearing a lot of hats versus moving into swim lanes versus very defined roles to go execute on? How does that feel right now?
Yeah, I can speak to that on the marketing side, and then would love to hear from Laura and Misha on their teams. I think it's somewhere in between, which for me is kind of the sweet spot. We're not in a place where you enter Ribbon on the marketing team and you're in product marketing or in demand gen or you're in brand and you're only doing that one thing and that function is super defined. But we are in a place where we are in the process of scaling. So you're not one person doing a million different things. And so you have the opportunity to like learn and grow, and kind of tap into different areas of, in the case of product marketing, like tap into all the different parts of product marketing, and then figure out like where you want to specialize as we scale and grow as a team. And so I think it's a nice sweet spot between joining like a super early stage company where maybe your function is like completely undefined. And so as marketing, you're doing a lot of things that maybe aren't marketing. We're not in that place, but we're definitely in the place where we're still scaling. And so you're not entering into a role that's fully defined. And so you have the opportunity to figure out what that looks like and build, you know, we say the best kind of career decision you ever made, building a career decision around what you want to learn and grow. And we're in that kind of like sweet spot right now as a company, at least on the marketing side. I'm sure it's the case for Laura and Misha as well.
Any other thoughts? Yeah.
I was going to say similar for where we are on the growth side. I think wearing a lot of hats, working very cross-functionally. Misha and I work very closely together across our teams, and can talk more about that, but often we'll see opportunities touch potentially multiple areas of the business. And so we'll kind of all join in together, but starting to see, especially as we scale and grow the team, more structure and more of a path around what roles future hires will come in and join, but still with that ambiguity and room to kind of problem solve as we grow.
Well, let's get into the roles then. Misha, I'll start with you. So key differences between the roles being growth and partnerships, or maybe get into that definition of what channel partnerships actually means.
Yeah, so on the topic of wearing many hats, I think our team has the most of a fluid definition around what we do at any given time, but it's come a long way since the beginning. For this role in particular, and for the way that we're defining channels, it is there's a bit of like two definitions for channels in our world. One is who are all the different or what are all the different platforms, companies, solutions that could include Ribbon as part of their offering that then goes to market and sells to another entity. So whether that is a health plan or a health system or potentially other digital health companies or a provider group, like, you know, who are all of those? So example types of companies would be like a CRM that needs provider data flowing into it that then could leverage Ribbon, or an EMR that wants to build a better referral widget and then it could leverage Ribbon. And these situations, it's not just like Ribbon as a standalone product wouldn't necessarily always resonate with the majority of the of a market. Like maybe certain like more innovative players would want it, but this is like the case was like, what's an all-in like package that we could that someone could purchase, and there's a variable component to it where from like a deal standpoint, every time we go to market together, we'll do joint like co-marketing, co-selling, and actually getting the final solution out there. So that's like one element of it, and we've can go into like a more specific example if need be. And then on the other element, it is, who is Ribbon a channel for? So this is like an interesting emerging part for our business, but we are an API and a little bit like the way that our product team actually likes to describe it, which I'll take a page out of their book. We're almost like the pipes. So you can flow a lot of data through the pipes. And once our pipes are, you know, plugged into some type of like home or front end, we could pass through other types of data. So as an example, there are, you know, it's very binary for if a provider is at an address or not, or if they are in network or not. So those areas like we've like really doubled down on. But who's good can vary, and who is like a high performing provider can vary. And there are a lot of other partners out there and companies out there that have used their own methodology, come up with their own like approaches and to start to measure what good is. And so we want to be able to distribute that data through our API as well, so that our partners on the other end can have like a suite of information that's important for their care decisions. So that's the second version of like the definition of a channel. So who's a channel for us? Who are we a channel for as well?
And I'm going to just stick with each one of you individually for these next couple, but so in this type of role, what do you typically, are you looking for more of an athlete, more of somebody with a very honed skill set who's done that? Where do you tend to lean on that flexibility of what you're looking for?
So I describe it in three ways. The first is someone who is excited about this like creative deal making. So you are in the room with this partner, thinking about the way to come up with terms to like grow together. You are a curious like product minded person. So either you're someone who's like very interested in asking like deep questions about things that are very vague, like there may be nothing there and you have to just like kind of like move your way through white space to define some solution together. And then lastly, it's someone who's like excited to be a function builder, or like build a team, build processes to actually scale this and make this a part of our org that's repeatable. So those are the three things that I would say would come together for this person. Any one candidate will probably spike on one of these three areas. So there's flexibility in that, but in general, like comfort and relative to like some of the other roles, like extreme ambiguity, and able to create like something out of very little.
Sure. And what in your mind, what does success look like in a year from now from this person?
In a year from, that's a good question. We would have had a number of scaled almost like playbooks for how to build channel partnerships within each of these different like segments. So whether it's EMR, CRM, whatnot, and then a few like examples of partners in each that are growing, a team to support that growth, and then a measure this as you will, but the cross-functional teams that you're working with also like understanding like how you will, like what is the right like cadence and like how you do work together on these elements. So those are probably the three things there.
Okay, very cool. Laura, I'm going to go down the same line for you on this. So kind of talk a little bit about the role and how it's different from the other roles and what that looks like from the growth aspect.
Yeah. So if I think of the way Misha described her team as kind of like the 0 to 1 or the R&D, I think of our team as the 1 to 100. So how do we really build on these early hypotheses to scale Ribbon across these different spaces within digital health? So really looking for this role to build relationships, build a book of business with customers, and then really advocate and evangelize our customers internally to make sure that the products and the processes that we're building are ultimately meeting and advancing their needs.
And similar question on athlete versus sales experience driven versus consult, like where do you?
Yeah, we've seen a couple profiles for this role. I think the first thing I'll highlight is it's a very consultative sales skill set. So former consultants, former sales professionals, people who have customer facing experience and are customer facing and relationship obsessed. I think really, really important for this role, and going out and building these relationships and getting these partnerships off the ground. So some combination of consulting, sales, other customer facing roles are probably the kind of the core profiles that we've seen.
Mm-hmm. And so Misha had external playbook for what channel partnerships plus team build plus internal playbook for stakeholder alignment. What does success look like for this person in a year for you?
Yeah, I think really building out a book of business and driving revenue generating partnerships for Ribbon, whether that's with growing out our kind of startup business or really helping to scale some of our enterprise relationships, or a mix, depending on the level. And then, so that's like the kind of core customer facing piece. And then really working internally with our teams to represent customers, to drive and partner with product and partner with marketing, and making sure that we're advancing and building in service of our customers, and kind of all of the associated processes that come along with that. How do we think about our product packaging? This is a collaboration with marketing. How do we think about pricing? All areas that will, again, kind of further these partnerships externally.
And maybe one quick follow-up on that, like being an ex-consultant coming in and being on the sales team and helping lead sales teams. I spent the first 3-4 months literally shadowing one of our main salespeople. What does that look like for the first 90 days for your team?
Yeah, great question. So we have a very structured onboarding process across Ribbon. We do this on our team as well. We do what we call a 0 to 15, where we're pitching and we're kind of role playing as if we are a sample customer. We're scaling that then across kind of the first month and the first 2 months, making sure that reps get a lot of practice and practice in pitching to internal stakeholders, practice in pitching to customers, and also really learning the space. Digital health is a very, very wide kind of industry. And so within that opportunity, really honing in on a specific segment and learning the players, learning the buyers, and making sure there's kind of clear understanding around who our customers and end users are.
Awesome. And Shelley, I know that there's a lot of areas that you plug in across those two conversations, but tell a little bit more about the product marketing roles.
Yeah. Did you save the best one for last?
Of course.
No, I'm just kidding. No competition. All roles are great. So on the product, I'll speak specifically on the product marketing side. The way that I like to describe product marketing is that this person would influence kind of all aspects of the customer life cycle. So thinking about everything from like product development to when we go to market and we support Laura and Misha's team, to when someone becomes a customer, product marketing touches kind of all of those different things. And so what's exciting about that is that you get to kind of like plug in to different skill sets. So very much like a general athlete, someone who can do market research and really support product on hypotheses around whether we should invest in a particular area, someone who can really like position the product to value and to our buyer personas when it comes to actually going to market, and then being able to work very closely with Laura and Misha's team on the enablement that supports them when they're going out and they're creating these partnerships or these sales conversations. And then on the customer side, as we continue to kind of grow and get more and more customers, thinking about that retention and expansion and how product marketing can really support the value that we bring to our existing customers. And so very much looking for someone at the lead level who can really build this function across all those different dimensions, build a team of 8 or more, just like given how many segments we do have to support on the product marketing side. And then for the senior product marketing manager, someone that can kind of do all those things and really work very cross-functionally and collaboratively with not just Misha and Laura's team, but also like all the teams at Ribbon, and really have like empathy for their challenges and where they can support. I think you're on mute.
Muted. Avoiding coughing into the mic again. Success in a year.
Yeah, success in a year. For both the product marketing lead and senior product marketing manager, I would say in 1 year, it's really like building a function. We have 3 product marketers today who are amazing. And so it's really just going to be like learning from the amazing like contributions and strengths and functions that they've already brought to the table and scaling that out, and really making sure that our product teams, our growth teams, our partnerships teams, basically all teams, including our customer partnerships teams, feel supported by product marketing. And ultimately what that translates into is that our value proposition in the market is super clear to every single segment that we serve, and that it's really clear what Ribbon does and how we can help improve a company and ultimately the patient experience.
Awesome. So I know we're running up on time. I want to ask one more question, and then again, if anybody has any questions they want to ask the team, throw them into the chat. We'll answer them quickly. But maybe my last question for you guys gets into, you've talked about a lot of the cool things and the fun stuff about Ribbon. I'm sure you've seen profiles of people that just don't fit well within Ribbon or shouldn't spend the time to look at it. What would you say if you're aspects that are either frustrating, that if you don't have these qualities, you won't be a good fit and don't want to be there? What would you say is the, if you really want to spend your time doing this, Ribbon isn't the right place for you? It's a hard question to answer, so I'm going to let you guys pick.
I'll start with one idea that I'll throw, or one thing that I'll throw out there, which is I think we've really built a culture, and just by way of kind of where we are as a company, of humility and flexibility. A process that works for 30 people doesn't work for 60, doesn't work for 200. And so people who aren't open to that kind of adjustment and challenging of assumptions and changing the ways in which we work, I think I've seen that profile struggle if you're looking for something that is a little bit more set and established.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yeah, I think we really hire people that are team players and ultimately like bring the same empathy that you would bring to the patient experience to the people you work with. And so this is not like who wouldn't be a good fit, but just to like put it out there that we very much like screen for both functional aptitude and our values alignment and who you are as a person. And so like someone who potentially is like super laser focused on like the functional aspects of the role, but doesn't necessarily like prioritize the kind of people aspects that come with it, I think like wouldn't be a great fit. I'm sure that everyone in HTN is like wonderful people. And so that's why we're doing this call with all of you, but just something that we're like super, super cognizant of in our process.
Awesome. Misha, go ahead.
I don't know. I thought I was looking at everyone answer. I think if you're looking for something in the scope of your title, whatever the title is, and that's like always like has been a tough one. And also, and then we haven't talked like maybe too much about this, but we're a very, going back to like stay hungry, keep improving. We're a very feedback oriented place. And there are some folks that just would not want to do that. And to be fair, I've been in feedback oriented environments where feedback is just delivered to you whether or not you want it, and not in the way that's like thoughtful. We're very thoughtful about it, and it goes into like the way that you enter, and part of your norms is to share how you like to give and receive feedback. But that's part of it. It's like this like growth mindset to continue to invest and grow. And for folks who aren't as open to that type of environment, I think it can be a bit more challenging.
Awesome. I will. Anything else that any of you three want to add or that we've missed as it relates to roles or Ribbon itself?
I will add something, and I think like Shelly touched on this, and really the one thing that we really do strive for is that this is the best career decision that anyone has made. And when they join Ribbon, it's like an aspirational kind of goal. But for me personally, I do really feel like this has been in part because of the way that I've been able to learn and grow, the way that I've been able to learn from the individuals on the team, the type of like the mission that we have, the way that we kind of like approach problems together and learn from them. And so I just wanted to share that. Like for me, it has been, and our hope is that it will be for those who join. And we hope that some of you maybe will.
Awesome. And we did get a question in the chat. What would you recommend for people who aren't quite sure what role they would fit best in?
Yeah, and I see, Kevin, that you posted Taya and Sid's email in the chat. I would recommend reaching out to them, and they can kind of speak to you. They're on our talent team. They can speak to you about your background and figure out what role might be a best fit, and then connect you with the right person to learn more about the role. So that would definitely be my recommendation.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Well, let me add, how about this? I'm going to ask you guys, how do you work together as a group? So what is it like? What is an example project that you guys work on, and how do you hand off and work with each other?
What is an example project? I think, the immediate example that comes to mind for me is as we think about building out the digital health market for Ribbon, working really closely with Misha and team on where do we really clearly have product market fit, and how can we kind of leverage those initial learnings to think about additional segments within digital health that we might want to explore, engage, test certain hypotheses, and then actually begin to open up new markets to expand our potential customer base.
So what is your role in that versus Misha's role in that?
So our role in that would be pulling in the signal and pulling in the learnings from just how we've positioned the product to date, and what we've seen resonate across other segments of the market, what we've seen resonate across certain types of buyers and personas. And then I see Misha's team's role as doing some of that R&D and research with those initial learnings, and then us kind of tag teaming together some of those initial conversations to fully to get to the 0 to 1 and then to the 1 to 100. Mm-hmm. Misha, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think on the other, so that +1 to what Laura said, I think the other way that we've worked together and more recently has been, let's take a large enterprise opportunity where there is multiple work streams at once going, and one of them is going to be a channel, and one of them is going to be a direct opportunity to build something together. And the way we want to talk about that is a product marketing kind of a new exercise. And that's probably the right now, very top of mind, is we're trying to figure out this, massive Fortune 10 playbook of how you get into those. That's probably the Fortune 10. That was very, very generous. I don't know, large companies. And so that's probably the other thing I would say is that we're kind of coordinating the efforts now.
From a product marketing perspective, we really support a lot of the market research, because we are the voice of the market for the company. And so it would be the product marketing team's responsibility to collaborate with Misha's team and with Laura's team to really start getting that research up and running, uncover any trends that would help inform how we should position what Ribbon does to this potential channel partner. And then on the actual sales side of things, or consultative side of things, providing the collateral and the talking points and the material to get that prospect over the line. The other piece too that our product marketing team is involved in is setting up our qualification process. So what makes someone a qualified prospect for Ribbon, and really collaborating very closely with Laura's team on what that should look like, but also what the process should look like in terms of her team really evaluating whether someone is qualified or not qualified, and how that translates to whether or not we choose to, continue the conversation with them.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Shelley, Misha, and Laura, for all the time today. As Shelley mentioned, Kevin did put in the chat, Thea and Sid, their email addresses to reach out to for the folks on this call. We will also send an email to you all with that information too, just in case you don't get it in the chat. And we will look forward to chatting with you all soon. Thanks for the time.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.